Dusseldorf. Sorry.
Oh, really?
I started giving out just as we went live.
Isn't Dusseldorf in the north, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of northwest, I think. It's only like it's less than an hour's flight here. But it's nice, but it's totally just for shopping. Like it's totally just actually, Ivan. No, he can't hear me. I got the most amazing Christmas Game of Thrones jumper for Ivan.
Oh, brilliant.
In Primark. Really nice jumper. It's in the men's section. It's black and white knitted with the direwolf, and then it just has Winter's Coming. But it's all like, it looks like a proper Christmas jumper. It's really nice.
Very nice.
Because I was getting jealous of all the guys in America having their Target, their cool Target jumpers.
I've been to Munich, but about 25 years ago, and all I can remember is it being really expensive. Yeah. Especially alcohol was unfucking believably expensive.
I mean, I think now, the UK is probably more expensive.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And Frankfurt, I went to Frankfurt as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Munich, Heidelberg, place like that. I really like Germany. It was just very different. Each German city is a very unique character as well. And it was nice. But, you know, we were just there to shop anyway. We did Christmas shopping. So I added little Christmas trees to my shelf here.
The German Christmas markets are fantastic. We have some really good Christmas markets in Manchester. So yes, I'm kind of getting into the Christmas spirit, just about. Bit more than I was last year, actually.
That's good. That's good. So with that, I listened to the chapters this week.
Did you? Right. Okay.
I did my notes on my phone, so I'll be looking at my phone. I did in the airport and on the plane. I sit beside this really crazy person as well. I mean, I was the crazy person taking notes of the Song of Ice and Fire, but she was properly crazy. I don't know. Anyway, so we are doing Tyrion 10 to Theon 1. Is it Tyrion 10? Did I write that right? Yes.
Yep. So Tyrion at the slave market, right through to Theon jumping off the ramparts.
And we have Jamie and John and Dany. And so I should say hi to all our lovely mods in the chat.
Hello.
And anyone else who joins. We have Connie and Sunny and AU. How are you all? Sunny, we will definitely get to that question. Why do you think Theon finally gets motivated and decides to help Abel / Bale / Man / Archiday's group? Depending on regard to that, I'll definitely come back to that later, guys.
I don't know if anybody else is getting this, but you're breaking up quite badly, Catherine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's the same for anybody else. It could just be me.
See if I can make this a bit better. How is that now?
Yeah, that's fine.
No, that's grand. I just changed what internet I was using. Sorry.
Oh yeah, yes, a wee bit. Yeah, it was just breaking up a little bit.
No, it's the weather's so bad. Sometimes the Wi-Fi gets a bit dodgy, so I'll use my mobile.
Okay.
Internet, so it should be all right. But if it isn't, I can't remember. There is a way of me changing settings here, but I have no idea how to do it.
That's all very technical. I'm clueless.
I just come for the chat.
I just click the button every Sunday.
So I feel a bit like Jorah Mormont now, beaten up after a weekend, and
yeah.
So if I look like I've been dragged through a hedge backwards, I have, kind of alcoholically and mentally, and Germanically. But so next week, I forgot to look at what we're doing next week. It's our last weekend before Christmas, and it is going to be the Dany 9 to the Iron Suitor. So
and we've got Cersei. We've got our first revisit to Cersei again, and we've also got Queen's Guard. So there's a Barristan chapter.
That's going to be good. So that's next week. So that'll be our Christmas treat. I don't think is it the Walk of Shame next week, or do we have 2 Cersei chapters? Maybe it is the Walk of Shame next week.
I think it is the Walk of Shame, and then there's another one towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully everything, I'm all good now. Thank you, AU. All right. I also have my feet up because I'm a lazy oak. But yeah, so if I get Ivan's attention, I'll try and show you that jumper. So because I know Primark's in the States now and it's all over Europe and the UK and stuff. So we're looking for a decent Christmas Winterfell jumper. It looks really, really good. All right. So we have Tyrion. It was an all right chapter. I feel this chapter and the next Tyrion chapter are kind of a means to an end. There's like little Easter eggs in them, but
yeah,
it feels like we're introduced to these characters, and when we were introduced to what's his name, Yezin, and the nurse, it's like, oh, this is kind of an interesting little take on this side of the world. Very creepy, awful, sickly, but kind of interesting. But then they're taken away from us so quickly. It seems like, oh, this was just to get Tyrion to Dany, right?
Yes, there's quite a bit of speeding up in terms of the progression of the story across several characters. So and with that you get a sense of the landscape depending on where the location is. So we get this looming sense of the Pale Mare just raging through the troops with the Yunkai. And then also later on in Dany's chapter, you get that real sense, I think anyway, from her, just this bitter disappointment that she feels that basically she's powerless and she's kind of, you know, she's lost what she was trying to achieve, and that just that kind of sense of political. I think she says something like, there's a quote, but she says something like, "A queen's hands are never clean." And you know, so you get a real sense of the atmosphere of everything that's going on. But yeah, you know, within that there are little things like the grotesquerie and the strange woman that Bracken was with that Jamie got aroused by, and that, you know, so that there are little things that kind of break up those chapters. But it seems to just be going really quite fast. I haven't got many apart from the Dany chapter. I really don't have many notes this week.
I have a lot for John this week.
Oh, do you? Right. Okay.
Yeah, because I felt this week was mainly about myths and legends and prophecy.
Okay.
Hi, Lauren. Welcome along. And yeah, I felt like it was... Yeah, I don't know. I think... Okay, so I just want to talk... there isn't much to say about this Tyrion chapter. I mean, obviously we see Brown Ben. I'm not really sure what his game is. Brown Ben.
I don't know why he was trying to... I mean...
Like, he can afford it.
He goes where the winners are. So maybe he felt that having Tyrion would provide some sway with Daenerys if he wanted to swap back again. He does seem to flip-flop quite a bit. But again, he provides a reasonable kind of rationale for that, I think. But that was definitely him.
Couldn't he have gone back to Dany and say, I need X amount of money. Do you want the head of a Lannister? And she would have gone, yeah, why not? I'm having a pretty shit wedding. That's a nice wedding present. Thanks. I hate you, but all right. Yeah.
Could have done. You could have done. Yeah.
By the way, Lauren said 7 people and only 3 likes. Thanks, Lauren. And then AU said, I hit it 3 times. That's how I roll. Thanks, AU. Committed to the cause. Yeah. So and this old crone, are we supposed to know who she is? The other woman?
Yeah, that was my very first question. Who was the crone? I don't know. I mean, maybe just symbolism, you know.
Let's say Joanna Lannister for the crack.
Yeah, could have been. And one.
I guess the thing about this is just looking at Tyrion. First of all, why bother saving Jorah unless he wants to have one over on him later or something? I don't know. Or
he doesn't
unless he thinks that's going to be an in.
But he doesn't quite. You get into his head with that one, and he doesn't really quite know himself, does he?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, why have I done that? That was. I can't quite work out why I did that. But I don't know. Maybe it's just strength in numbers, camaraderie, wanting to be. Maybe he feels sorry.
Is like that as well, though. Like they kind of do these things without realizing it. And maybe subconsciously a Lannister always knows how to not just pay their debts, but generate debts. Like,
well, there's also that thing. I think Tyrion is, I think he is still quite clever. He's one of the cleverer Lannisters. And I think possibly what he's, I mean, you can see here, Jorah he's absolutely crushed when he finds out that Daenerys has married somebody. So that just knocks him right off, apart from the fact that he's been absolutely pummeled. So maybe Tyrion's thinking, right, okay, he's more vulnerable than I've ever seen him since I ran into this guy. It probably would be better for me to keep him around because I can manipulate him much easier now that he's in this kind of a state. So that you know, that could be, I'm being very cynical there about Tyrion's intentions, but
he's good at keeping, like he even comments on being able to speak to the sellswords. You know, he knows how to speak to sellswords. I think Tyrion in this chapter underestimates how much he's benefiting from Dany's rule, because there's like a real shortage of slaves now. There's a real shortage of slaves now. So he's able to push his luck. There's probably a shortage of dwarves as well, thanks to Cersei. So he's really able to push his luck, be a little bit insolent and sarcastic. And yeah, it's fun and entertaining for a crowd that, let's face it, they need a bit of a laugh in the times they're in. And I think he's really, I don't think he realizes how much his tongue will get him in trouble, which, you know.
I don't know. I think there's like a bit of gallows humor there with Tyrion. Maybe, I think he kind of feels that the danger daily to him has massively increased from his days when he was safely cooped up in the Red Keep or in Castle Rock. So this is completely a different experience, and I think he loses it from time to time. I mean, he keeps thinking about these mushrooms that he's got in his shoe, and how you know, if it comes down to it, I can just get out of here and I can take Penny with me, you know, and that'll be.
That's kind of what he does, right? He poisons Nurse later with the mushrooms, isn't that right?
Oh, does he?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I've forgotten about that. I don't know if he still has some. I'm sure he still has some later on.
Because he even comments on the fact that he gets to keep his clothes. I mean, the whole slave trade is just horrendous.
Yeah,
like it's just such an awful place. I don't know why Dany wants to stay here. When we get to the Dany chapter, we might talk about that actually, because it's just such a cesspool. It's awful.
There is
as bad as Westeros gets.
There's a kind of like fatalistic attitude though that you get. I think it comes in waves with Tyrion, and it kind of meshes really well with that feeling of when they get the collars fitted, because that's a really, to me, that's very symbolic, but it's also a really momentous occasion in like, no, Tyrion, you really have been taken down several pegs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because he's one of the few people to comment on what he's wearing all the time.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, just for like Penny's reactions, like, oh my God, you know, and he has to sort of calm her down. But yeah, they are now enslaved. So again, Tyrion has to think, right, okay, I need to use my wits in this situation, and he starts to. He's playing with that's how he ends up getting a place so that he can perform in the fighting pits at the wedding and the ceremonies that are going on after the marriage. Is his skill at Sivas or Sivassia, however you want to say it. So he's still got his wits about him, but there are these waves of like just fatalism, I think, that run through Tyrion's character, and it's because he's definitely, he's at risk. Somebody could just take his head off at any given point in this scenario.
But, more than once in this chapter, he gets really excited about the prospect of being sent back to Cersei. To the point where he has to hide himself smiling in the auction at the thought of it.
maybe he thinks, look, that's just a more familiar environment. I will be able to get out of that.
Or maybe he thinks she'll hear that he's coming back and he'll be able to take that from her again. You know, he'll find a way to take that from her.
Yeah, maybe.
There's a weird relationship though with Cersei. It's far weirder than Jaime and Cersei nearly. There's a weird...
Yeah, he thinks about raping her. He thinks about... He constantly in the earlier books was talking about what she looked like and how beautiful she was and what she was wearing. There's some sort of an obsession there.
And certainly on the show, not so much in the books, but certainly on the show, he was more of a father figure for the kids than Jaime was and Robert was. So there's certainly like there's a weird connection there with Tyrion and Cersei. And maybe he's attracted to her not because she's his sister. Maybe he's attracted to her because she's Targaryen. You know, a Lannister always wants what they can't have.
But there is there's also doubt that creeps into Tyrion's mind about Daenerys. So he's kind of like, I don't think he's really quite made his mind up about who she is or what her motivations might be. So he's listening to all the gossip that's going around through the camp, rippling through the ranks. And at the end of the day, he's trying to figure out, well, if she's this, and so are we as the reader, if she's this amazing breaker of chains, why has she married a slaver? What's going on there? What's all that about? And Daenerys actually thinks that herself in her chapter.
So I kind of, again, I just want to come back to the Brown Ben Plum thing because I'm not entirely sure, because I think he's also weighing up Tyrion and to see how can he use Tyrion if Tyrion manages to get close to Dany, or I don't quite understand why go to these lengths to get Tyrion and fail twice and not really make an effort.
Well, it later on in one of Tyrion's release chapters for the Winds of Winter, I think it is, or it might even be at the end of this book, where Tyrion joins the Second Sons. Do you remember?
Yeah. And
he is a second son, and it's all you know. And he has a conversation again. I'm sure it's with Brown Ben Plum.
Okay, I can't remember this at all.
He asks him what he wants. Tyrion comes straight out and says, because he's signing, he wants to get into a better position in the Second Sons. So he's promising the sellswords all sorts of things, and he's writing all these fucking checks that his ass can't cash, kind of thing. But he gets to Brown Ben Plum, and he says, "What is it you want? What can I trade?" And Brown Ben Plum, I'm sure, unless I'm dreaming this, somebody in the comments, please tell me if this is right.
I read that Winds chapter.
Brown Ben Plum turns around and says, "I want Pentos." That's what he wants.
Right. Okay.
So he may be thinking to himself, a Lannister always pays his debts. If I can get him in a certain position that's, maybe he's really thinking quite strategic here, Brown Ben Plum. He did say, again, I keep going to Daenerys chapter, that so much so I probably won't have much to say when we get there, but he says you can have a bold sellsword and an old sellsword, but not a bold old sellsword.
It's great, isn't it?
It is a great line, but actually, you can unless that is some sort of dichotomy, because Barristan the Bold is an old bold sellsword.
Well, he's not a sellsword.
No, he's not a sellsword. That's true. That's completely you're absolutely right.
No, but you're right.
He's old and bold.
I was thinking that too. Like, how many old bold knights do you get?
And also, Brown Ben Plum himself is described earlier on in the chapter at the slave market as having salt and pepper hair. He's he's not a young man. So he's also an old. Well, maybe he just considers himself old and not bold. That's what he was saying. I go where I think the winnings is a little bit like the Walder Frey of the sellsword companies, but he's after Pentos apparently.
I need to say hi to Lady Dreamfire. I'm going to give you a full look. Sorry, now you're hearing the noisy chair of this epic T-shirt. It's gone way too big for me now, but it's by Blaze Manga, who's a YouTuber and animator.
Cool.
And amazing t-shirt. I love this t-shirt. And it's A Song of Ice and Fire, not Game of Thrones, which is cool as well. And hi, Lady Dreamfire. I'm always interested, in what you're doing on a Sunday. You're always doing something nice and cozy, I feel. And great use of emojis as well. But I don't really have much else for this Tyrion chapter. I think you're right the way you were talking about Dany as well. And I think this might be a problem with wins. The chapters are starting to bleed together, maybe. And we haven't really had like we had that at the start of a Game of Thrones. And I loved that about a Game of Thrones, that book. So it's kind of making me even more excited for wins. This idea that the chapters are starting to bleed,
Yes, yeah, definitely. I hope he continues with that style. Actually, it's got to. I mean, we've got to have some kind of coming together at some point. I think my favourite quote in this chapter is when, right at the very beginning, when Tyrion's in the slave market and they're waiting. They're hearing the bids. And he's kind of like metaphorically rolling his eyes, and he says, "See what comes of chasing dragons." And I laughed because I thought it kind of made me think of the readership generally. This is what comes of chasing dragons, doing podcasts every Sunday night.
yeah, exactly. Hi AJ, thank you for coming along. And Lady Dreamfire is making soup, Claire.
Oh, lovely.
Always making something lovely on a Sunday. That's perfect, actually, for the wet Sunday. Although I just had Thai green curry.
You're making me hungry again, and I've already had my dinner.
Gorgeous. Ivan went out and got takeaway because we were too lazy.
I think what I can have for a snack.
Lady Dreamfire, go for it. We can read along.
Yeah.
All right. So will we head over to
Jamie?
Yeah, I know, it's gorgeous. Yeah. Jamie. Can I just say, this is why I love George R.R. Martin. I completely forgot we had Jamie this week. And when I heard, because I was listening to the audiobook this week, when I heard Jamie, I was like, oh my God. And I was in the airport with my coffee going, I was just there going, why am I so excited to hear the POV of an incestuous child murderer? Like, how did George do that? This is like a feat of brilliance that he turned this character around to be one of my favorite POVs. Honestly, I'm so excited. And I think as well, it was because it brought me back to Feast. And I love Feast.
Yes. It's an interesting chapter. We get a lot of the history with the Brackens and the Blackwoods, which is so fascinating, really, when you think about it. And it just makes me think there's definitely something there, if you scratch the surface of this story, that is about time not being right and dates being wonky and certain things happening where it provides a period of peace and then something else happens that breaks that apart. And that quote again from Hoster Blackwood, "Old wounds never heal." And I think that is something to do with all of this thing about 1,000 and the seasons and time being a bit wonky and Meister's not recording history correctly.
And so also in a biased way. Which we have with Fire and Blood as well.
Yeah, completely.
So they had, because it's like the trouble goes back either 500 years or 1,000 years, or before the Andals or whatever it is. Like they don't really know. They have the reverse of both sides. Like both sides claim they were the kings,
and actually they're both really the same people. They've got each other's blood running through each other's veins, both sides, the Brackens and the Blackwoods, to the point where they are the same people. And actually they do seem to take quite a relaxed, it's almost like this is always here, it was always going to be here, it's always going to be here in the future, we just need to get on with it, give him hostages, do this. Because I was thinking, Jamie seemed to be quite, he seemed to thrash out those terms quite favourably, but also quite firmly. And it's like, you're not just a fighter. You can actually step up and sort of, broker some sort of an arrangement where you just go in and go, right, forget this shit, because they'd been there for 6 months, remember?
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
and it was all starting to get a bit lax, a bit lazy, a bit like, oh, here we go again with this old merry-go-round of this kind of history that they've got between them. And it's like everybody's bored of it. You kind of get this feeling of like, it's just there. We can't do anything about it.
AJ says, I love these POVs because he's the best character in the series, arguably. He's definitely up there. I mean, I just have a whole new appreciation for Jaime. I always loved Jaime, but like, yeah, he might be in my top 5, maybe my top 5. I really enjoyed it this time around. And I do think with the Jaime chapters and the Brienne chapters in particular, well, Jaime chapters really more particularly, but it's quite politically nuanced. It could get very dull, yet George manages to frame it in a very cinematic, kind of charming or comedic or tragic way. Like, it's always like doing this dance. Like, it opens with him walking in on your man having sex.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the description of it is hilarious. And Jaime kind of gets a bit turned on by the woman that
he does. So he's thinking about right at the same time that he's thinking about going back to, so I'm going to go in, sort all this Bracken Blackwood crap out, and then I'll be able to go back to King's Landing and see Cersei. But as soon as he thinks that, he almost immediately starts to regret having that thought, and then he starts to get aroused by the woman that Bracken's with, Hildy, she's called.
But like, this is the second time Jaime's attracted to somebody you wouldn't expect Jaime to be attracted to. Maybe old Jaime, maybe not disfigured Jaime. But and maybe it's because Cersei was the most beautiful woman in the Seven Kingdoms, so he's had the most beautiful woman in the Seven Kingdoms, and it didn't work out that well. And now he's like attracted to the complete opposite. Maybe, I don't know, but it seems like there's a lot stirring for the old Lord Commander. I'm getting them mixed up already in my head. It's Hoston Blackwood that's with him, or is it Hoster Blackwood or Bracken?
Blackwood.
Right,
and the Blackwoods seemed to be the ones that seemed even more resigned. You know, Blackwood was the guy who he was. He bent the knee quite easily. But he said he would bend the knee only to the king, not the Bracken. This thing like runs deep, but it's meaningless and it's ridiculous. You kind of just want to knock the heads together and go, you're the same people. You're the same family, for God's sake.
AJ makes a good point as well, that a lot of the chapters in this book seem to be taking place over longer periods of time. They do, with the exception of Dany. Dany's chapters are, I think the ones towards the end of this book are like literally a day after one another. Like they're very closely, they're very close together. But I think you're right. I think like the Jaime chapters are, I mean, we haven't seen him since Feast, but he has been there quite a long time. The Jon chapter, I don't know how Jon managed to get all of that done. There must have been some period of time since his last chapter. I kind of forgot how much he achieves by this chapter. But and we've talked about that with Tyrion as well. There's weird timing things going on. But I think, I mean, this is another reason why George is struggling at the moment, probably, is this timeline that he's created. It is quite confusing for everybody involved. But yeah, Lady Dreamfire is recommending a show called Jesus. Oh, okay. With is it a TV show?
I think she said she went to the theatre recently.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay. Oh, I see it. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Is PA Pennsylvania? Did I get that right?
Yes,
I haven't learned my states. Oh, that's great. I love going to the theatre. And she said you don't have to be very religious or anything like that. It's just for the experience. Excellent. Thanks, Lady Dreamfire. So if anyone's in Pennsylvania,
AJ says, I think it's interesting how Jaime's taste in women is part of his change as a person. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's just certainly expanding his horizons, I think. And he does think of that letter. He thinks about the, I love you, I love you, I love you. Please come and save me. And he's just...
I was going to make a crude joke about something's expanding. But yeah, no, he's definitely, there's a lot of change there. But I kind of have, I have fan theory. I'm not fan theory. Fanfic going on in my head that Hoster is going to get to King's Landing and end up with the Bracken girl, because she.
Yeah. That's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, because especially if there's more kind of wasting of the Riverlands, this kind of ravaging of the Riverlands kind of thing, that there'll be potentially she could be the heir then.
Yeah,
and that would basically mold the two houses. We could end up with a Brackenwood or something like that.
Super house.
Super house. Yeah. Because there's definitely something, like, it seems there's something to this as well. There's something more going on with this story. I don't know if it's just to be. I was actually thinking of the prequel as well, where we get this Blackwood Bracken break in the prequels that they're making, because if it goes back a long, long way, potentially we could get them right.
That it seems to me like the Bracken and the Blackwood fight, it's like a microcosm, mirror image of the the North remembers and the Dornish fight. It's just like all of the infighting that's happened on a bigger scale. You could even say between the living and the dead, that one group of people versus another, and it's just squashed down into this very small two competitive houses in the same location. Just talking about location, actually, there's something definitely in this chapter about, Raventree, the location of this chapter is ancient, and the Blackwoods worship the old gods. But also Bracken was also for Robb until the Red Wedding. And there's the description of the old heart tree at Raventree. It's almost like this constant battle between nature and man. Like the castles, the heart tree is trying to grow so big that it overgrows the castle grounds, and the hundreds of ravens that come every single night to settle in the Weirwood, the huge old heart tree.
Is that the Weirwood courtyard? Is that what they this is the problem when you listen to it, I don't get it.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And because what I was thinking with that was that it's gone out of my head.
To me, it's like somebody's kind of somebody's going there every night to check what's happening between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. Is this fight still going on? Is it still? I don't know. There's something that links to this ancient fight between the two houses and how ancient Raventree is. It just, all of it goes back.
It provides
the beginning of history. Yeah,
and it provides a really nice backdrop to the Karstark story in John's chapter. But the thing I was going to say, because I have like alcoholic dementia of some sort this weekend, there's this, like, I think it's Blackwood says that when Jamie asks why are you choosing now to kneel or to come over to this side or whatever, and he says, well, everybody I know was killed at the Red Wedding and I chose not to die for the dead. Which I thought, this doesn't seem like these households don't seem like they're the types of households that they seem like they could bury the hatchet if they really wanted to. And yes, it seems like it has to be there. This animosity is almost a necessity.
For me, this chapter is like the bigger scale of this story is A Song of Ice and Fire, but this chapter is a song of Bracken and Blackwood. It's the same thing. It's one thing versus another, and it's linked to the old gods. It's linked to the fact that Raventree as a location is just so old. The other thing about this particular location as well is this fascinating mystery that's just plonked into the middle of this chapter that just even Jamie thinks to himself, well, that's just one of those mysteries that maybe, you know, that's what makes it interesting, because it's a mystery. And it's Pennytree, the village Pennytree.
Yes.
And the hundreds and thousands of the pennies that are kind of nailed to the tree. So it just glimmers with all the, I suppose, copper from the pennies on the tree. And Jamie just looks over it and thinks to himself, I wonder why that is. I wonder what the origins are. I wonder what that's all about. And then he kind of immediately then thinks, it's just going to be one of those mysteries, I think. And it just made me think, oh my God, there's so many things that as you're reading it, these things are thrown at us where it's like, just one of those things, you may never get to find out about it.
Well, we do know a bit about Pennytree, though, unfortunately. Not enough, but
yeah,
it's mentioned in the Hedge Knight series.
Oh, right. Okay.
I believe, and now I'm going to butcher this because I've read the Hedge Knight series and I can't really remember, but I think that area was belonged to the Crown. So right. It's like a neutral zone between the two.
Okay.
I think that's it. I think that's correct. And right. It was established around the time of Bittersteel Bloodraven.
Okay. Why the Pennytree, though?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. But I think that's true. And because I didn't really think much of it. I just thought, oh, this is another thing to highlight when my Lonely Planet Guide to the Riverlands comes and I want to go to see all these places. Pennytree is going to be another one that I'm going to want to see, right? But it was on Davos Fingers. They were talking about it. And they had some theories about why the Crown ended up owning that particular spot. Mm-hmm. But I think they're talking here about, AU said, how bad are the Blackwoods to be kicked out of the north considering Boltons are there? Yeah, it's a good point, actually. It is very suspicious, the Ravens and stuff coming. Yeah. What is their names about? I don't know. I definitely think there's a lot of houses like that in Westeros, and I mean in our own history as well, where there's so much animosity between them. But it almost seems like they can't weed it out.
They can't quite remember on what basis. Yeah.
And as you said, like the blood is completely mixed, and maybe
and the history's written differently. So they've tried and succeeded to to make peace between them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. They're capable of doing it. They've done it, and then somebody comes along and manipulates history, and then we start all over again. Somebody can't remember what the truth is.
I'm trying to think now. Did Bittersteel have a mother that was a Blackwood, and Bloodraven had a mother that was a Bracken?
Yeah. So right? Again, it tipped into their animosity towards each other. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can I just say, when I'm thinking of Blackwood and Bracken, and I want hands up emojis for people who are old enough to remember this, but I think of J.R. Ewing, and was it Ray, the other guy that he always had, the other oil tycoon?
Was
it Ray?
Yeah,
I don't even know what his name was.
It was Ray.
That's what I think.
It wasn't his daughter married to one of the other Ewing siblings,
right? Yeah, I think so. And they were always like, you always got the sense that they absolutely murderously hated one another.
Yeah,
but for like chance or like some
they would have been brothers.
Slight error, they would have been like the best of. Yeah, they would have been brothers for sure. Yeah. Aren't they half brothers? Doesn't that come out? Sorry,
Ray and Bobby. Yeah, Ray and Bobby were married.
For spoiler alert for Dallas of like 30 years ago. But yeah, Ray, he was so like.
Oh, Barbara, did you watch Knots Landing as well, Barbara? Do you remember that? It was like an offshoot of it.
Knots Landing with Gary.
Yes, Gary Ewing. Yeah.
Oh my God! See, the whole of Ireland would just tune into Dallas religiously. Mass in Dallas, that was what weekends were for.
So Brienne turns up at the end of this chapter.
That's right.
Looking,
Let's not forget that.
looking like shit, according to Jamie. She looks like 10 years older. Well, of course, she's got all these additional injuries now.
Yeah.
So she's not going to be looking the prettiest, really. And she tells him that she's found Sansa. Come alone. He has to come alone, or the Hound will kill her, and that they're about a day's ride away. This has fueled so many theories about what's going to happen, what the end game is for Brienne and Jamie. Do they fight? Is this, you know, obviously this has got something to do with Lady Stoneheart. So that's going to have to all be resolved in the next book. So,
Jamie chapter in the next book or Brienne chapter in the next book, whose point of view will we see this from? Well, or will we get a Sam John scenario? Or could we get like a prologue or epilogue from the point of view of Pod or Sir Hyle? Where, like, will he hold out that long? I hope not. But like, I'm trying to think, whose point of view would I want it from? Probably Jamie's, because if it's Brienne's, we'll know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I think there does seem to be, as much as Brienne's one of my top 5 favourite characters, I do feel as though there's something about her coming to a natural end, and she's a true knight, and she'll go out, you know, being very virtuous and knightly and saving the maid. So I think out of the two, it probably will be Jamie if they end up fighting.
Yeah. So
I mean, she's clearly lying to him. Straight, we know he doesn't. I mean, he's just heard her. You know, she's turned up. She's got no reason to lie to him. They were kind of quite chummy previously, but she lies. She says that the Hound will kill her. And that she's found Sansa. Well, clearly she hasn't found Sansa. So it's a trick.
Okay, there's a couple of things about this. Is she lying that it's the Hound because she's realised who the Gravedigger was? So that's an easy thing she can lie about without showing up and saying, "Oh, it's the Hound." Like, she doesn't know if Jamie has other news of the Hound, but she can use the Hound as an excuse because she knows where the Hound is. Do you know what I mean? Like, when she says that, I don't know why she doesn't show up and say the BWB have her.
Yeah, it's like she's throwing him a line to make sure that, you know, whatever happens when you go and fetch Jamie, make sure he comes on his own. Tell him whatever it is you need to say to get him to leave the camp and come with you on his own. And it's a day's ride away. So, you know, it's not far. Yeah. Come with me, Jamie. It's not far. If you don't come on your own, the Hound will kill Sansa. Well, that's the bit that's obviously a lie. So
but even Jamie, like, even though like he has this kind of mini daydream in the middle of it that they'll be ambushed by the BWB and he'll get to maybe take a few of them out. Like, even Jamie has to be realistic enough to know there's no way he'll take the Hound now. Maybe he thinks with Brienne they have a chance, the two of them. Yeah, but I feel, I guess she can't say it's the BWB because they definitely wouldn't have a chance against Beric and Thoros and all those guys. But I'm sorry, everybody's talking about Knots Landing versus Dallas and all the nostalgia of that. I mean, I'm a bit too young for Dallas, but I watched it on repeats. That's how I know. And Knots Landing, I would sneak up to watch it. So that's probably where I learned about sex, actually, Knots Landing, even though I didn't really know what they were talking about. I was just kind of fascinated by the hair.
Oh, that's interesting. AJ, apparently, well, we know this. George has said that Jane Westerling will be in the prologue of Winds, which, you know, I'm sure everybody has a theory about that. Why would Jane be in there? I think it's because she's pregnant and because it's in terms of the cycle of Meister, Wildling, or Old Town, Beyond the Wall, we're due a kind of Meister chapter. Somebody always dies in a prologue, always somebody dies.
Well, if it's the Maester, they usually die.
Yeah, AJ thinks that her family, Jane's family, is going to die in the chapter, and that this will be thanks to Lady Stoneheart. Now that's interesting. That's one that I hadn't really thought of. For me, I just got fixated on, oh, what if we went to Greywater Watch and the Blackfish was there and Jane was giving birth, and the Meister had to die because he knew the secret of. But does Rob really need to have an heir at this stage? Probably not.
A horrible thought just crossed my mind. How vengeful is Stoneheart?
Oh, she's
capable?
She's motivated by vengeance. It's 100%, runs through her like a stick of rock.
But, like, would she be capable of killing Jane?
I think she would be capable of killing one of her own children, really? Especially if she didn't know if it was like maybe Arya turned up. I think she would do. She's so driven by vengeance that she'll do something that ultimately will be like, oh my God, no! My vengeance made me do this, and it will be the worst possible thing. That
I still think Jane Westerling will die naturally, if you like.
Yeah, there's no reason for it to be around in the story, her or any of the Westerlings on Spices. I'm totally
on board with your prologue. The way you've it could be both though, AJ. Yeah. I like your idea that they show up and it's like a bit of a bloodbath in either way. But I feel like Jane could die in childbirth because. As I've said before, this is such a common theme, but we haven't really had a major character that in the present die from childbirth.
This would be all in the Riverlands location if Jane Westerling is with Lady Stoneheart, because she seems to be also. It's like Lady Stoneheart needs to be in the proximity of the God's Eye, and that's sort of like that area of Westeros, the Riverlands.
Well, there's also precedence in Westeros for people killing their maesters if the woman is lost in childbirth. So that could be one way that Stoneheart takes out the maester. Potentially.
But again, there's so many variables here. If Jane is pregnant, why would Lady Stoneheart want to do anything to harm her? But,
Connie, I'm just assuming that it's pretty obvious that the Westerlings were involved.
Jane was at Riverrun, yeah.
Connie's wondering how would Stoneheart know that the Westerlings were involved. I mean, they have people from the Red Wedding with them, so like anything, like it seems like they were planted by Tywin, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely has all the makings for the way we're fantasizing about it. All the makings for the best prologue of all time.
Yeah, it does.
But so another question I want to ask is because Davos Fingers do this thing. If you don't know their podcast, by the way, they're brilliant. But Davos Fingers do this thing where it's some jingle on an American TV show where they go, where in the world is Brendan Blackfish Tully? They do this thing where they have a jingle to ask where the Blackfish is. It's hilarious. But it is every time I think, where is Brendan Blackfish?
He's got to turn up. He's got to turn up somewhere. And if it was also in the prologue with Jane Westerling, that would be great. I mean, he could be protecting her, but just where are they if they are in the?
I mean, George, do yourself a favor and start putting more of these characters together, because it makes sense and it'll take some of the pressure off. But I'm looking forward to that. So the next chapter then, away from the Lannisters, the lines, I have to look at my phone now, is we're on to Jon now. Yes. So Jon, how long has passed since the last Jon chapter? Because he's managed to get a lot done.
I've got to say, look, here we are out the wall. And immediately it's described as being as cold as the breath of an ice dragon. That's 3 separate, really obvious occasions in 2 Jon chapters, and one was an Asher chapter. the Wayward Bride, I think it was, where there's this description of a dragon coming out of the earth, or an ice dragon, or being as cold as the belly of an ice dragon. This is, you know, just bear that in mind is all I'm saying.
Can I just say, Connie writes Stoneheart in all capital letters, and it's really scary. It's like, now I don't want winds to come. It's too scary. Scared me, Connie. But yeah, there's a lot of the gossip. I agree with all of you guys. The gossip could have got anywhere. Thomas 7. I want more Thomas 7 as well. Barbara. Hi, Barbara. I didn't say hello to you. And AJ, I think we're all on board with Howlin' Reed. As Kyle might say, hype train for Howlin' Reed all the way. So yeah, again, a lovely description of, like, John. Yeah, just this lovely description of it, of the wall and stuff. I have a question. Why are they having a R'hllor marriage ceremony?
Yes, that's exactly one of my questions. Is a red wedding legitimate even in the north?
Why? Like, how much power does Selyse? And everybody seems, to be honest, maybe this is the way to go because it's the happiest wedding we've had.
Well, it's very different to the other red wedding that we've experienced. So, but it's a different religion for both of them. Alice Karstark and the Fen will both worship the old gods. I mean, I know so that. Why? Maybe it was just one of those, you know, if the ceremony has to be carried out. I mean, why wasn't it? It could have been carried out by. Equally, why didn't they have what's his face, Meister Celador or whatever he's called, up at the drunk up at the wall? Why didn't he marry them in the light of the sun?
Because if they have time to go all the way to get Karstark, they have time to get him. Also,
maybe it just had to be that way because of Selyse
but doesn't it suggest that Jon's meddling is way outside of his remit as Lord Commander of the Wall? Like, this is suggesting that he's trying to do this is for the Wall, this is to save the North, and he's trying to, like, everything he's doing is for the Wall. But, like, Jon, if it's for the Wall, then it should be old god ceremony. You're using the state of a would-be, like, in the eyes of most of Westeros, a would-be usurper king, and this looks too much like meddling.
Would the laws of men have taken place if this wedding had been in, at a weirwood tree instead of the light of R'hllor?
Because I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm guessing there are more northern men at the Wall than any other type of man. So the old gods, and even if there are not more there, definitely less R'hllor worshippers, right? So this is a really like he can. There's a lot Jon has been doing, obviously, you know, allowing women in, allowing wildlings in, all this kind of thing. But now you're kind of literally like, you know, Homer Simpson with the glove smack to the religion. It's like, this is too far, Jon. This is way too far. Why does Alice and Magna agree to that?
Who knows? I don't understand. There's obviously a lot of I got you know, they must have been strong-armed into this.
Actually, Barbara has made a good point. Maybe since the wildlings had to accept R'hllor as their new religion to get the crossover, so it's probably the religion of the groom takes precedence.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't know if the Night's Watch would see it like that.
Well, he's got a new sigil now, hasn't he? And isn't that some sort of representation of R'hllor as well, like a fiery sunburst? So it still incorporates the Karstark sigil, but it's now this new House Fen.
And by the way, like it doesn't fail. You know, I haven't failed to notice that of the happiest Jon chapter since Game of Thrones, Clare and myself have managed to make it dreary from the get-go. Because it genuinely is like one of the happier Jon chapters in a while.
Here's a question for everyone. How did Selyse end up being so pious? Is she just, has she been enchanted? Yes. Do you think?
I think so. I think she's been.
I know, I'm sure we've asked this question before, haven't we, with the male chapter probably, but it just seems like, how did that happen? John describes her as being like she literally would just need one word from Melisandre and she would walk into the flames. She's that enthralled by this religion. Nobody seems to question it, do they? It's like, whoa, that's a huge change.
AJ says the marriage ceremony is really weird, but Connie says that nobody died at the R'hllor wedding. I kind of thought the marriage ceremony wasn't too bad. It seemed to be all right. It seemed to be a little bit more romantic, maybe. Yeah. I kind of liked the idea of, you know, once you pass through the flames, what fire puts together, nothing can separate, which we might talk about in a bit. Yeah. But I mean, the two weddings we've had in the north, well, to do with the north, Rob's wedding and Ramsay's wedding have been miserable. Mm-hmm. I guess Joffrey's wedding wasn't particularly great either, the Faith of the Seven. Dany's wedding wasn't great, like for her, her wedding night wasn't great, and her current wedding isn't great. So it's, I don't know, is this our first?
Well, yeah, it is, you know, it's quite successful, isn't it? And we all sort of decide that we all love Alice Karstark. She's a fantastic northern lass, you know, and she stands there saying, I'm not scared, he should be scared. So she, you know, she's got plenty of like northern moxie.
Should we be scared?
Maybe.
Should we trust the Karstarks?
I mean, you could ask that. Why did she end up going there in the first place? What really did she hope to achieve? And there is, again, that certain resignation from, what's he called? Cregan Karstark. So who knows? You know, maybe it's a trap.
Is it a trap? Because she does say to the Carhos, remember.
She does, yeah.
And I again, this was another Davos Fingers point, that the last time we heard that was with that family was when Rob was taking her dad's head.
Don't they make a point of the TV? I know we not really talk about the TV show that much, but there is an Alice Karstark in a very different role, but there is an Alice Karstark at Winterfell, and they make a point of her saying that in the TV show.
And yeah, who do they marry her off to as well? They marry her off to someone in the show. Is it a number?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
But anyway, Connie says John and Sam were the only ones to take vows at the Weirwood. The North doesn't remember some things. That's true, Connie. AJ says very poetic but still strange. AJ says, okay, weddings suck. We get it.
Yeah.
Lauren says, question, due to Melisandre being actually an old woman, how old do you think she is? What's the oldest you think she could be, given the little we know?
Well, in this chapter, she actually says to John, it's when she's trying to kind of explain away that she isn't really that good at interpreting the flames. And she says, oh, you know, I'm as mortal as you, Jon Snow. Well, we know we know she's not, but it's interesting that she actually makes a point of saying, oh, you know, I am mortal, just like you, Jon Snow. Which made me think, what the heck does that mean? Does that mean that Jon is going to end up being immortal? Does that, you know, I don't know. But I think, Lauren, I think she could potentially be as old as the religion itself, which I think is quite old. I mean, the Faith of the Seven, to me, feels like a very new possibly manufactured religion. Whereas the
Faith of the Seven, is that newer than the Faceless Men?
Oh yeah. The Faceless Men.
The Faceless Men has only been around since the Doom.
Oh.
So is the Faceless Men the youngest religion?
I was thinking that was a long time ago. Was it the Doom, or was it just the slaves in Valyria who'd been there?
I don't know.
For a
I
long,
actually
long
don't
time?
know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how old the actual religion is. Andals are 5,500 years at least in Westeros.
I don't know. I think she could be ancient.
I think the Faceless Men is the youngest religion.
She could be as old
Anyway,
as Bloodraven. She could be. There may be something there about ice preserves. There is something about this blue Mel, isn't there? Is she?
She's very tired. She's very. It feels to me like it's got to be. I think it's hundreds rather than thousands, right? Like I don't know if it would be that much. Thank you very much. The hand delivers more tea. This is the mug you got me, so. By the way, he also bought me in the jumper to show you.
Oh, fantastic!
It's lovely,
yeah,
isn't it?
I like that. Yeah.
And it's like it's just wool the whole way through, which is really nice. So there you go, guys.
I like the grey and the black as well. I like the colour scheme. Very nice.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not sure, Lauren. I haven't really thought that much about Mel. I mean, I think she's important, but yeah, I need to think about her more. I feel like the show has kind of not sullied, but definitely interfered with my view of Mel. Although, in fairness, I think she might be one of the characters closest to the book character.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, I think she is.
Yeah, I think you might be right, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, so John, I mean, she says here, by the way, I do like the idea that the Karstarks can't be trusted, even Alice. I also like the idea that we could end up with a lot of northern houses run by women at the end of this.
Yeah.
But either way,
this is historic, isn't it? It's the first time in our knowledge, anyway, from the history that we're aware of, that a wildling family or group has married into a well-established highborn house in the north.
Is it House Thane now then?
House Thane. Yeah, so John has effectively created a new house, new sigil.
Okay, we need to talk about John here. Is this what gets John killed? I feel like this is the chapter. It's like, because it's his happiest chapter, ironically, this is where he's really, basically, this is where they start planning. I mean, this is also where she talks about, you know, the knives in the dark and seeing him surrounded by skulls and all that.
Close. Yeah. Yes, I think this is probably, I think they've all been plotting for quite a while, but this is like the nail in the coffin. And it's because it was the ceremony was the Red God. I think that was probably the tin hat on it, to be honest with you.
So what is there any significance in the words in the R'hllor ceremony of what fire puts together, let no man pull apart? Because John immediately thinks, well, except for fathers and uncles, fire has pulled apart fathers and uncles. That seems to be what John is thinking. And I wasn't really sure why he had that thought, because I thought maybe he was thinking of ice, like fire brings sword together like ice. And
why would he think that?
I don't know why he thought that. It didn't make any sense to me, because fire hasn't taken Benjen and fire hasn't taken Ned. So if anyone has a decent explanation for that, I'm not entirely sure why he thought that, but
I don't know.
Yeah, because it's right after those words as well. I didn't really understand what he was talking about. And he starts going through the motions about Benjen and Ned and all that kind of thing. But I just feel like John, he's out of his element, and he is, I did like the fact that Alice was flirting with John as well. Like, this could go any way. I like this. I do like this this part of the narrative, because she could be playing him. She could have just made one of the most monumental alliances in the history of Westeros, and it could bring the country together. So her and Magnar could go off into the sunset and be happily ever after. Or if something happens to Magnar, there's potential there for John and her to reestablish the Stark connection.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So it could go. I'm kind of interested in either way.
She does remind me a little bit of Ygritte. You know, she's got that kind of like, you know nothing, Jon Snow, and she's, you know, he should be scared of me.
He does think that, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
He thinks that really she reminds him of Arya.
Yeah.
And it breaks his heart. Which, AU is messing as well. He's saying they're his favorite nails. I don't know if he's being sarcastic, or is he? Are we actually infiltrating your psyche, AU?
I don't think these ones particularly, but the ones that were on Instagram earlier today, the purple ones that were on Instagram, I think you like those. Yeah,
I'll have to paint your nails for you, AU. So I think that's all I have for this. I mean, obviously we have the Azor Ahai. She sees only snow. The only other thing that's a big thing in this chapter is the patch face stuff, right?
That is weird.
Visions. What's that all about?
Mel sees him in the flames, surrounded by skulls with a bloody mouth. The thing that we know in the books that can potentially be surrounded by skulls with a bloody mouth is a Wayward tree. So how is Patchface connected to... Yeah, go on.
Miss, I have a theory.
Okay.
Will Patchface be killed by the hooded man?
Well, that depends on who the hooded man is.
But, okay, this is probably getting too much into the Theon chapter, but is the hooded man the one giving people bloodied faces, or is that the Spearwives? Because the Spearwives have definitely murdered some people. But the hooded man is doing the bloody face thing, right? Is that right?
Because they said quite clearly in Theon's chapter, that wasn't us. None of that, you know, Yellow Dick and the boy, the you know, little big Wolver.
Well, they
or whatever,
said, well, we didn't murder those ones. Like, it's just suggesting that they murdred somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe but also I feel like if he's been hanging out with Shireen, and when we find out the wildlings' hatred of anything related to grayscale, they may kill him later on, the Spearwives.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Because he's been hanging out with Shireen.
Yeah. Oh, poor Shireen.
But I don't know if it's Patchface is the dangerous one, or Patchface is the one that's going to be killed. I'm not really sure how to read that. Lady Dreamfire, enjoy your dinner. Thank you for coming. I like that we're her appetizer of a Sunday. That's really nice. Lauren has loads of shiny holographic polish waiting to be bought. Don't start, Lauren. Yeah. You're going down a dark road.
Get yourself down to Boots and pick up Celestial Silver from Barry M. It is amazing. It's one of my favourite polishes of the year, even though I've got a ton of indie polishes. That Barry M is amazing. Yeah.
Get yourself to Primark as well. See if they have any of those hollows left. They have some good hollows. But I need to get that Barry M. I hope it's still around when I go home.
Yeah, well, I will try. I'm going to try and pick some extra up. So even if it's not until like May next year, I'll get one for you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So yeah, the Patchface stuff, guys. Should we be afraid of Patchface, or do you think he should be afraid? What's coming for Patchgrace? AJ says that Patchface is the real prophet for the Drowned God. We know Mel thinks the Drowned God is just a thrall for the Great Other. It's a really good point. And AJ says he is what Damphair thinks he is. Ooh, I like that.
There is that. Well, there's been a lot of theories for many years about Patchface being an agent of, you know, a champion of the Drowned God. But there also seems to be quite a lot of connection to the old gods here as well. I mean, the skulls and the bloody mouth is a weirwood. So what's Patchface doing in a vision like that?
You see, the problem is, I think we're able to make a lot more connections for the old gods and for lore because of the show. Like, we can visualize those kind of magical / religious elements in the world, more so than the drowned gods, because there isn't a huge amount of it in the show. There isn't a huge amount of it in the books necessarily, but I think we're going to get a lot more of that. And I think just something in Fire and Blood is going to happen, and you have to read it. And when you read it, just read it. Anyway, so when we get to it, which we have been talking about, folks, we are doing Fire and Blood after a Dance with Dragons.
So at the end
Oracle has spoken.
Yes, we are. We are. So we also get. I don't know what's going to happen to those Karstark men in the ice cells. Maybe something happens to them later that I can't remember. But we also get a letter from Eastwatch about, so that's happening. Ships are on the way to Hardhome. We also get the Queen's men, Selyse's men, Axel Florent, just being really presumptuous, presuming that not only Val is a princess, but she should marry them. Again, not entirely sure why they would want to do that, apart from just how she, like aesthetically how she looks. And then at the very end of this chapter, we get the two blasts of the wildlings returning. So we know that Val and Tormund are on the way back in the next chapter.
Sorry, Lauren, don't pay that for Born Pretty. You can get it cheaper. I'll find a link for you. The Amazon link. I think it's too dear. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a look. I'm pretty sure I can get that cheaper.
What is it you're looking for?
She's looking at a multi-chrome peacock coloured polish. She just put in a link to Amazon, but it's for Born Pretty. It says $7.99. That's too dear for Born Pretty.
Yeah. If you go to Beauty Big Bang Nail, and there's a ton of cheap stuff there. It's free worldwide shipping, and if you use code NSO, you get 10% off as well. And there's a lot of like stamping plates and things that I get that it's basically free. You just pay a couple of quid for the shipping.
Yeah.
It's dirt cheap. It's from China, so it's like it takes usually about 3 weeks to get there, but to get to you. But it's really cheap.
Yeah, and I think they're about 2 or 3 quid on the site. I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they do all sorts of.
They do sorts of deals and
chromes and different polishes and stuff. So it's literally dirt cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. But if it's the 2 polishes, maybe it's not too bad. £7. Maybe it's not too bad. If it's, but is it free shipping? That's the thing. Anyway, we'll end up talking about nails. So this is what happens. AU, I blame AU. Yeah, I think that's it for the John chapter, right? I think all Mel sees is snow, and awaking dragons out of stone, and John tells her that she's got this wrong because Stannis wasn't born on Dragonstone. Yes,
but we know who was, or at least that's what the story is. I think she was born in Storm's End. But the other thing to make mention of, which obviously comes up in Theon's release chapter for Winds, is a raven has been sent to Stannis regarding the Karstark's treachery. So we picked that up in that spoiler chapter. Okay, Daenerys.
So Dany, what a chapter. I think the next 2 are my favorite chapters this week, especially Theon. But Dany, it's a pretty good chapter. Pretty shit wedding, but pretty good chapter. I'm glad. I hope we're not getting much more of Essos, because I'm sick of Essos. I sound so
sorry.
horrible.
Just to completely go back to the previous chapter, but I'm just looking at comments here. I completely agree with Sonny Frank. I totally think that Patchface is a water white. We've got fire whites, water whites, possibly some sort of stone whites with grayscale. And yeah, I think he's definitely a water white. Sorry, back to Daenerys and young Kai.
Yeah, the only thing we're missing really is an air white, but I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
Unless an air white is going to be some sort of, I don't know. That's the only thing that you can't, unless that's what warging kind of is.
Okay.
I don't know. But that seems to be the only kind of elemental kind of thing.
Ice whites, obviously, yeah.
And if you're thinking Captain Planet, we need heart wipes. Wipes. Heart. Anyway, so Dany and the awful wedding, and where do we start?
Well, she just feels like she's lost it. She feels like, was it all for this, really? The fighting pits are open again. This is the price of peace. Yes, Dany, this has happened. You can't go in, think that you can shake up an empire by breaking chains and being all like, you know, the hero of the hour when you've got absolutely nothing in place to provide a decent economic, political infrastructure. These are the kind of compromises that you have to make. You have to marry someone that you don't want to. You have to make those compromises. You have to sue for peace under horrible circumstances sometimes. But
it's almost the opposite of Jon.
Yeah.
Who is, I mean, he is, we know as readers that he's trying to create compromises. But he's not explaining this very well to the other guys at the wall. And it comes across like he's unwilling to make any compromise. Like based on like it seems like the watch is like, it looks less and less like the watch they signed up to or the watch they were signed up to. Whereas Dany, because she's got advisors around her, she is compromising and she hates it. She says very weirdly, and I feel like this is the only time we've heard this and not her, like I didn't look it up, so you can tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I feel this is the only time outside of the Boltons that we've heard someone say this or something like it. Dany says, drinking with men she would rather flay.
Yes, yeah.
Like that's a Bolton thing to say.
It is. You'd think she'd say burn or...
But it's also, the reason I pointed out, is it there, like, is it a breadcrumb? Like, because there's a lot of things that Dany thinks in this chapter that you kind of go, and like in this book, but especially in this chapter where you think, but for, like, if we didn't know, if we weren't in her head, she would look really crazy. Like, her thoughts... sometimes are really super dark and very evil. And like, is this the beginning? Like she says to Missandei in this chapter, show me that there's good in the world. And as Missandei is kind of telling her, oh, I don't know what Missandei is telling her, she falls asleep.
Butterflies in Narth and things like that. Yeah, she falls asleep, but she has a horrible dream. Like, is that like a red flag? Is Dany going to really end up being one of the villains? Or it could be that Missandei's intentions are not necessarily what we expect them to be. Well, especially if she put some sort of spell on her. There's still this underlying, like, who to trust, who should she trust? And, like, oh, you know, you get quotes in this chapter like, never trust a sellsword, milady, from Brown Ben Plum. Well, I think probably Brown Ben Plum can be trusted more than somebody like Dario could be. I totally agree. Yeah, and maybe even more than Missandei, who I don't trust at all. Exactly. But it's kind of, it's that, like, who does she trust? And actually, probably her most trusted advisor is who she shouldn't be trusting. Like, is there going to be a certain irony there? Like at the end of that Jon chapter as well. Of course, we didn't mention it, but the wildlings return, so it's Tormund and Val and all that kind of thing. And the irony is, Jon's most trusted advisor could be the guy that he hated. No, not but the guy that was supposed to be his enemy, Tormund, right? And
with Dany, could the same thing be happening with Brown Ben?
Possibly.
But also, where we kind of overlook the innocent party, are we going to overlook Alice and overlook Missandei? And are they going to be two people that maybe we shouldn't trust? I don't know. It's George, so anything can happen, I guess.
But I think he's instrumental in helping her to sort of see the light a little bit here, because it's the first time somebody lays out, look, oh, what did you expect us to do in this situation? We could have done this and died heroes that nobody ever heard, you know, any of our stories, or we survive. We do what we need to survive, and that's what we did. What is it that you don't understand about that? And she kind of takes stock and says, yeah, I can see it. You're right. I can understand why you made that choice. And it's the first time we really get Dany maturing in that sense of, because she hated Brown Ben Plum. Like, it was a real personal, you know, she got, as the kids say, all caught up in her feelings about it. She did, you know, she did. And he's laying it out here, and Barristan's kind of backing him up and saying, yeah, what he's saying is pretty much, you know, it's right.
Yeah, and I guess
so much so that she then, after that encounter with Brown Ben Plum, decides, you know what, let's get the sellswords back on side again.
But
go
also,
out Barristan, and yeah,
maybe I should go see the dragons.
Yeah.
You know, because he's totally right. He's like, oh well, my men didn't see you back us up with the dragons. They were kind of like,
yeah.
We don't have a fight. Like, that's the whole reason they come to you. And you're not using them. So, and as he said, like, you know, there's more than gold.
It's interesting because she says when they're visiting the dragons, she says to Quentin, they call to me, which makes me think, has that been happening and she's just been ignoring it and just not, like, you know,
eating figs and locusts and dog.
Yeah, and fucking Dario. Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you know, AJ says, how can you not get disillusioned living in Slaver's Bay? Yeah. And AJ, it's not weird to like Ben Plum. I kind of have a soft spot for him too. I think he's a very realistic character in a very odd situation. I mean, this is the good thing about Essos. They're also extremely different, because we've got such an extreme array of like cultures coming together. AJ says Missandei tried and calm her down by talking to her about butterflies that cause a fever and kill everyone. yeah. And that lulls Dany off to sleep.
Nice little lullaby. Yeah.
Lauren says, I think George is very good at putting doubt in the mind of his characters. For example, Littlefinger tells Sansa that he plays a game of what the worst thing someone can be doing. It points out that people are always want to look for the bad in someone, even when there likely isn't, but we should all take care to choose who we trust. And trust, like, if you think about it, like trust, hate, love, like it takes a long time to change somebody's heart. Like, if you love somebody, no matter what that person does to you, it takes a long time. But trust, like, a crack is a break, right? It's very hard to rebuild trust in people. And AJ says, I think the theme of this book in general is to distrust the close friends or advisors, which will come to fruition in Winds. There probably is going to be a lot of reveals, which might be betrayals.
That's got to be laying the groundwork for the bittersweet stuff that's going to be happening. Like, oh no, you know, she was stabbed in the back by a most
Tyrion.
trusted advisor. Yeah. And maybe, conversely, some odd alliances that you wouldn't imagine, kind of, you know.
But that's where all this started, right? Like, if you look at it, it all starts with, you could argue, with Aerys and Tywin.
Yeah.
They were best mates.
Yeah.
That fell out of bro love. So Lauren says, when caught up in power, we get paranoid about who's coming after us, even in our own family. Power corrupts the best hearts through violent means. It sounds like Lauren is speaking from experience. Like now I have a vision of you, Lauren, on top of your pyramid somewhere in Scotland. Like Dany. By the way, that was really creepy when Dany, like the acrobats make a pyramid and they have a naked girl on the top and she thinks, is that supposed to be me?
Yeah.
And I was like, I think so, Dany. I think they're saying basically the Emperor's got no clothes and
and she's about to topple.
Girl. And it was like like at her wedding, it's like they're openly making fun of her. And they're feeding her dog, and like obviously they eat dog, but it's like then they talk, oh, they'd eat dragons if they wanted to, and it's like they're her children. Like she talks about them as her children.
There is something here, I agree, Lauren, about, you know, however much power you have when you get caught up in a situation where you have that power and you can wield that power, ultimately you end up feeling powerless.
Yeah.
And you think, this hasn't turned out the way I wanted it to, because there are so many other things that you have to fulfill and kowtow to in order to get what you want, that actually it kind of becomes sort of so watered down and meaningless in the end that you do feel powerless. And you have to do some horrible, nasty things, like, you know, the quote that no queen has clean hands.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Connie, did you delete AJ's messages for a reason? What's going on? Did she mean to do that?
I don't know.
No, I think she did that by accident. That's okay, Connie. Unhide this user. Sorry, AJ. I don't know what happened there. There you go. Poor AJ.
She's swinging a wrench round like, boof.
Yeah. She doesn't. She's really like. AJ said something very controversial, shouting, "Burn them all." AJ, we don't like to be triggered like that. That's all right, Connie. It happens.
Lauren has a castle, of course, not a pyramid.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're up in the north. That's right. Yeah. You know, it's like in Macbeth. You know, Lady Macbeth says that what is it? Our deepest desires. Oh, what's the quote now? I just did it. Our deepest desires are like basically what we desire the most becomes like the most painful thing. Like it leads to the most doubt in our life. Like they were so ambitious and they wanted so much power, and when they get it, this shit they have to do just to keep power. They're also pretty shit at it. They were really bad. They run Scotland into the ground. And you kind of get that with Robert Baratheon, and you get it with Joffrey, and you get it with Dany to a certain extent as well. When they take power, they're completely unreal. AJ says Patchface was behind this. Yeah. Hashtag Connie is Patchface revealed.
Oh, just going back to the whites, by the way, somebody was talking about the air whites before. I think it was
Barbara,
John.
Was it? Barbara's comment?
I think it was John talking about the mists. Oh, it could have been Barbara being the air whites. Maybe the shadow babies. Could be air whites, maybe. I don't know though. There's smoke.
Really dark.
It seems smoke, kind of fire based. So I'm not sure. But
well, I mean, it depends on what happened. How like grayscale is like we assume that it's passed through touch, right? That's what they say. It's passed through touch. So unless that's kind of like the stone is kind of our air white kind of thing, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of mists, though. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, what else happens in this chapter?
Well, a couple of things that jumped out at me. One is, again, that sense I mentioned before about the pale mare swelling through the Yunkai ranks outside. So it's just that mounting pressure all the time about that, you know, those people that followed her there, Misa, mother savers, and she's just leaving them there to rot. And it kind of feels like it must just generally be how Dany's feeling about her kind of conquest of Meereen. You know, there's something rotten about all of this. Barristan speaking very highly of the Martells
Yes.
I mean, he's from that neck of the woods, isn't he? He's a Dornishman.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, I think he is a Dornishman. He's from.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, he's from that area. But he
Why
does.
Did I think he was Stormlands? Why did I think that?
I'm fairly certain he.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, if someone can let us know in the comments, I'm sure somebody will know where Barristan's from, but I'm sure it's in Dawn. But one thing that jumps out is he's talking quite highly of the Martells and Quentyn, and he's a Martell and it's an old ancient family, blah blah blah. And Daenerys is trying to say to him, "Oh, can't be bothered with these Martells and these Westerosi," and she's not impressed at all. And she says, "Unless there's more to him than I can see."
Yeah, I feel like that is that directed at the reader.
Well, and I just think, is there more to Quentyn than we can see?
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Connie. I'm so sorry, Connie. I know it's not funny, but her phone got puked on by her cat.
Oh, that's terrible.
So AJ, it's not Patchface, it's Lady Stoneheart. Oh, Connie, I'm so sorry. That's awful. Don't worry, we were joking. It doesn't matter. Jesus, oh my God. I'm sorry, Connie. That's terrible. That's awful. I hope your cat is all right, and your phone. Oh God. Cat's getting awful. I feel like we need to do a cat awareness. I feel, Lauren, you need to use a lot of cat emojis, because we like Claire's cats regularly feature as being brazen and bold. Well, Lauren has about 60 cats or something. Connie's cat's 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
Is she a white? What's going on? Oh, the poor thing. I hope she's all right. So, sorry, you were saying, about, I can't remember.
It's a very elaborate way of moderating, isn't it? Cat puke. Yeah. What I was saying is, this piqued my interest because we know what happens to Quentyn, and he ends up a burned, charred, just barely alive, really, really hanging by a thread. But it's when Daenerys says to Barristan, she's not bothered about, she's not impressed with Quentyn or the Martells unless there's something more to him that she can see. And I've just put in my notes, is there? ? Is there more to Quentyn than we can see? So will he survive this? Will he finally turn around and impress her somehow?
So we're both right. About House Selmy. It's in the Stormlands, but the seat is in the Dornish marshes.
Okay.
So we're both kind of right.
Oh, right.
He comes from maybe the two.
Maybe
there's a lot of alliances there or something.
Yeah.
But I think Dany's question is right, because I think George was anticipating what readers would be saying. What is the point of this storyline? Where is this going? Is there more to Quentyn than meets the eye? I really don't see what the point is in showing up with two knights.
Yeah.
Dario, do you think Dario's reaction is a little bit extreme?
Yeah, but
it's why bother, Dario? Take a break.
But he's also now in a position where he's a hostage, isn't he? So he has to kind of toe the line, so it must be really frustrating for him. But he was duped by the Westerosi, and he can't bear the fact that someone's kind of, had him over.
Or is it the case that he can't get rid of his Dar, but he could get rid of Quentyn, who's also vying for Dany's affections, maybe?
Yeah, possibly.
So
the other thing to mention before we get out of this chapter is his Dar actually sleeps with Dany. I couldn't remember that at all. That whole Daenerys last chapter in this book, where she's wandering around and in the sort of Dothraki Sea, and she seems to experience what seems to be excuse me, a miscarriage.
But that's the day after. Like she's going to be taken by Drogon in the next chapter, is she?
But I don't know how long in that chapter she's been wandering around the wastelands with. True. I'm not sure.
But I think she's already pregnant with Dario's baby. Because as I said in the last chapter, it said she had a glow about her, which is something that early pregnancy, a lot of women are told they have a glow. One of my friends said it's just because we're kind of sweating and feeling kind of shite.
Yeah.
I don't know, but like there's lots of good like hormonal reasons for it, but there seems to be, I think she's already pregnant, but maybe it could be his stars. She definitely could have passed it off as his stars.
Well, I couldn't remember them having sex at all when I
could. It's creepy the way he nuzzles at her ear.
Yeah.
I hope we made a child tonight.
Yeah.
Also, Roy Patrice's narration of it.
But that was about it, really, for me for the Dany chapter.
Yeah, I think so. Just the little tidbit that no rider has ever flown 2 dragons, which I don't think is. I don't know if that's true. I can't remember in Fire and Blood. I thought there was somebody that did, but I could be wrong.
I don't know. I've not read it.
But is that I wonder, is that like a red flag or something that will be broken in this series, that kind of rule?
Possibly.
Will we have a rider go to 2 dragons, basically? Also, the other thing that I just wanted to point out in this chapter, it's hard to read my notes off my phone. That's what he says. God grant that we have made a son tonight. It's just really weird. The other thing is she regrets never having a maester. She's only ever had a brother. And and I was kind of like, well, that might be a good thing, Dany.
It probably is. Yeah.
A maester would you'd definitely be dead by now. All right, so our first Theon chapter since Clash.
Yeah.
Technically. And I will go back to, let's start this off by going back to Sunny's question, I believe, at the very, very beginning of the chat, asking why now? Why do you think Theon finally gets motivated and decides to help Abel's group? He doesn't know them. Again, I'm leaning more into the Theon is having some sort of... I feel like Theon has we've been watching Theon go through some sort of psychological fracture and mending in this book. And I'm not sure, we don't see everything he's doing, because it's like he's got, like, there's some chapters where there's gaps in the events. It feels like he finds himself in places, and it's almost like he doesn't remember things. And I just wonder, has he had more of a relationship with these people than he's documented, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think it's probably on some psychological level reached the end of his tether. He knows one of the things that you could say quite easily is boosting him in this situation against Ramsay and towards escape is that Stannis is there. Stannis is right there. And I suppose if you're thinking between, like, I'm going to get, no one's going to forgive me in this situation, but who would I rather kind of, have a noble end with? It probably is Stannis rather than Ramsay. But also, reading through this chapter, again, I've mentioned this before, but it is easy to forget, for me anyway, it's easy to forget that Theon actually pretty much grew up in Winterfell. He knows his way around. He thinks about old Nan quite a bit, and we know this, the Stark siblings do, Arya does quite a bit, Bran does quite a bit, Jon even on occasion does, but Theon does quite a bit in this chapter. And then he thinks almost in a kind of reminiscent way about the people that are dead, that at his hand, like Micken and people like that. You know, it's like this is the first time that we get to find out, although it doesn't take that much of a leap, that Micken gave Theon his first sword. There's a history there.
And maybe that history is encouraging this Theonness, if you like. And it's great the way he refuses to say he's even Reek in this chapter. And maybe it's Winterfell giving him back that power. And maybe he's also kind of connecting to his original identity, because it could be a bit of Bran, it could be Winterfell, it could be just him actually reaching the end of this road to redemption. I feel like this is the last Theon chapter in Winterfell. I don't think Theon is going to be back at Winterfell.
No,
I feel like there was so much nostalgia built into this chapter, and the urgency to leave Winterfell. He feels that, but he also feels a deep connection with Winterfell.
Yeah,
and that's quite sad. But I do have a theory.
Okay.
Bit of tinfoil for you.
Yeah.
So we have Abel, aka Bale the Bard, aka Mance, potentially aka Arthur Dane, or whatever you want to call about it. But Old Nan. So Old Nan is mentioned by Jon, like you said, by Arya, pretty much in all the Stark POVs. She's mentioned quite a bit, and she tells them alternative history to the Maester. And I think Lewin at one stage even says, don't listen to Old Nan.
Yeah.
Now, Mance is clearly using...
I think he says it a couple of times, actually. He says it a few times, old wives' tales kind of thing. Yeah.
But Mance is clearly using this legend of Bale the Bard to... Because he wants to find out from Theon how to get in and out of the crypts. He thinks he's rescuing the real Arya Stark, right?
Yeah.
Because only Theon knows she's not Arya Stark.
Yeah.
So he thinks he's taking the she-wolf of Winterfell. He thinks he's taking the blue rose, the brightest rose, and he's removing her. I think he's the one who sends the pink letter later on to try and sneak back in a bastard, right? This light veil, right? And potentially just as Mance, although it also works maybe even better if he is Arthur Dane. For those that think he's Arthur Dane, I'm still not sure about that. But the reason I'm saying this, if he is Arthur Dane, or even if it's Mance, there seems to be a very real effort on behalf of Ned, Mance, and Howland Reed to use songs and stories and myths and legends to familiarize their children with key characters, key tropes in their history, and veil them in songs, but they're actually real. These things are real.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like Ned actively encouraged Old Nan to talk to the kids. And inform them of this stuff. Maybe even to the point where when Jon is brought back into Winterfell, like, I don't know how underhanded this is going to be. I don't know if we're going to get like the Battle of the Bastards in the TV show is one of my favorite things I've ever seen. It was amazing. But that's going to be Stannis, right? Are we going to get that Battle of the Bastards? I don't know. I kind of like the idea of if Stannis is somehow defeated, that Jon is snuck into Winterfell through crypts or something like that, and that's kind of like the dead rising, because Jon is also kind of rising out of there, but it also kind of fulfills that Bale the Bard thing. And I know there are theories out there that all of the stories from the past they're actually telling of events now, isn't there? Is that theory that there's like that these are stories that have been planted by potentially Bran. This is how, if time travel is going to be a thing at all in this series, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be passed on in wishy-washy legends.
Through like songs and stories and legends and
and that could be it as well. But I also feel like the North remembers, there's so many ways to read this. And I think this is something the North does in particular. This is something that like the North passes on from wildlings all the way down into the North. You've got these stories coming back again and again. And they, unlike the Blackwood Bracken thing where they've got different versions of the story, for the most part, the Northern and wildling versions don't change. Like if Starks did something bad, they did something bad in their own history. They don't change it to make themselves look good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unlike the Blackwoods and Brackens, they change it so, oh, we were the underling and they were the oppressive king and all this kind of thing. They change their role. Like it feels like it doesn't happen as much in the North. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But the other thing I didn't. So
well,
there's also,
before you move on, sorry, I am listening.
Yeah.
I'm just putting a top coat on this manicure. I think you may have hit the nail on the head there.
I think this is, if we think about, and we've had it a lot recently, coming up in chapters about don't trust the Meisters, the grey rats, they control his, that, you know, they don't give us the truth about the real history. The only way to combat that at all, any of that manipulation of communication, you know, fake news, the only way of combating what the Meisters are doing is to tell the history based on the truth of real events through stories and legends and songs. And there's a real sense in this chapter that singing and song is used as a weapon by Mance to, you know, it's used as a tool for distraction, like go escape now, you know, because everyone's listening to this particular song. It's a great way of moving everyone's attention from one thing to another, which absolutely had to happen in this chapter because there's a massive fucking fight in the middle of it, right in the middle of everything that's going on. There's a huge fight, and the only thing that stops that from becoming a complete massacre and them all just piling in and killing themselves is Roose saying, sing a song. And so it's huge. There's a huge thing going on that points to that. And I think that's the reason, whether they believe it or not, or whether they do indeed remember or not, the reason that the North says they remember is because they've got a reason to remember their information and histories and stories not being bastardized by the Meisters. That's what they remember, and the North remembers because of these stories and legends. So I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah, it is like, because we have it in Ireland as well. You preserve stories in song form. And even like the Canterbury Tales and that kind of thing, and Beowulf, they would have been orally passed down, right? And they're important preservers of culture when history wasn't even written down. Connie says Ned actually discourages Kat about the nursemaid's tale in early chapters. She's more of a listener than Ned. He forgot. But there are situations where Ned tells the kids stories sitting around about the fire. Kat even thinks about Ned telling the kids stories. So I think Ned is savvy enough not to, I think he knows to let old Nan do what she's doing. And even the Tower of Joy stuff, like that gets out, even though Ned doesn't really want it to get out. And he never badmouths the Danes or anything like that. So and also with Kat, she's way closer to Lewin than Ned is. Like we see that in her first chapter or second chapter in Game of Thrones.
She is, yeah.
AJ says, I think that that's why Marwyn leaves. He's sick of the bureaucracy of the Citadel and the fact that the Maesters don't like magic. I'm not sure what's that in relationship. Did we say something? Sorry, AJ. I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I'm not really sure what that is in relation to. Is it just that he doesn't? They don't.
The bureaucracy of the Citadel, and also that it manufactures information.
I see.
That's biased and corrupt, and
so I guess the Maester would be maybe arrogant enough to overlook songs.
Yes, don't
Like,
listen to that. She's,
yeah.
you know, don't listen to old Nan. She's talking absolute nonsense. There's no such thing as grumps and snarks, and don't be silly. Let's come and sit down and read what centuries of Meisters have told us is the real truth.
Yeah, and Lauren makes a good point. The songs are used to convey messages to people, like Rhaenys did with Aegon. She invested in singers and mummers to pass on the good praises of his deed, his rules, his just battles. Yeah, it's true. And like, you know, even, you know, we see, you know, like with Marillion, like there's a lot of singers that are really pivotal to storylines in like Tom of Sevens. There's, you know, there's the singer that they tortured, I can't remember his name, in King's Landing. Kyburn.
Oh, the blue, no, was he the
sugar,
he
what's
was
his name?
The Blue Bard or something, was he?
Something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's clearly, it's one of those things, like Azor Ahai, a lot of characters can fit it. I think the idea of song, a lot of characters can fit that as well. I mean, Mance isn't subtle about it, picking the name Abel, but I do, there's a couple of things as well. So there is the Mance Rhaegar theory, there's the Mance Dane theory, there's, you know, there's a lot of theories.
I still think he's a Stark bastard somehow.
Well, that would make sense as well, for sure. That if he's going to get out to try and sneak back in, he's going to go hide in the crypts. And
that if he is now there and he can't get out, everyone else is escaping and he's still in Winterfell. He effectively is a Stark in Winterfell. Which also, may change the dynamics of, you know, what the Boltons are trying to do.
It would also explain how I think he is the author of the pink letter, and I think it might explain how he gets that letter out, because there may be another exit to the crypt.
Yes, and he knows.
There may not just be an entrance.
He knows the lay of the land. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, he seemed to be very familiar with Winterfell.
And who is? So we have these spear wives. Who I think is Rowan.
Yes. She says they didn't commit the recent murders, and then basically neither of Theon and Rowan don't trust each other. He tells her that he didn't kill the Stark boys, just the Miller's boys, and she said that they've not committed any of the recent murders, but neither of them believe each other, even though they're both on this doing this escape plan.
But why? She gets quite uppity when Theon says winter is coming. Like, why does she give a shit if he uses the Stark words? She's a wildling. So, like, apparently there's a theory out there that she's not just a wildling.
Maybe not.
But I don't know who she's supposed to be.
She gets stabbed, though, in the end, doesn't she? So...
Well, sorry, who gets killed? Because I get confused, because I don't think all the spearwives are dead, are they? Because when I looked at the wiki, it said dead, 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 and I'm like, but I'm pretty sure we only saw one of them get dead, like killed.
Well, there's the one that stays in the room. We don't know what happened to her. I think
Squirrel, yeah.
There's who's, you know, the bait and switch. There's also there's Honey, Squirrel, and Rowan, and the other one who's begins with Freya.
No, Freya. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Freya, I think. And the guard at the gate kills. Well, I don't know. I can't remember. I've just got in my notes that the women are holding back the Northmen, holding back the Kneelers, and then Theon and Jane obviously jump from the battlements. But I don't know.
Do you think
which one survives?
Do you think they're all dead? Because that's what the pink letter says, right? They're all dead.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, maybe the one. I mean, we don't know. We don't know the fate of at least two of them, so maybe not. But I think it's interesting that Mance stays, because he could have quite easily left, revealed himself to Stannis of like, you know, I'm this is all Mel's work and I'm on your side and, you know, let's join forces. But he's decided to stay in Winterfell, even with that amount of, well, let's just say blood is boiling definitely amongst the ranks in Winterfell. I know you said earlier that everyone believes that Jane is Arya apart from, you know, everyone knows this apart from Theon. But in my notes, I've got, surely everyone knows that Jane isn't Arya and they're just all playing along with this.
I don't think Mance would be bothered. Why would Mance do all of this if it's
Mance
not Arya?
maybe not. I think a lot of the other northern lords know that she's not.
Maybe. I feel like they get out too
not.
easy. I think they get out too easy, and you could be right. I mean, it reminded me of Jaime talking about how he had to stand outside the room and listen to Aerys rape his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, poor Jane. When they show up, she says she'll even do the thing. She'll even have sex with the dogs.
Oh, yeah.
God, almighty.
And she's got bite marks all over her. She's in a real state. So I'm guessing, you know, she just goes wherever they tell her to go. But she screams, and that's what alerts the guards to the spearwives. But so we get this dramatic jump at the end.
So the other things, of course, the other big thing in this chapter before they rescue Jane is the murder of little Walder. Which causes a big thing to happen. First of all, I think it's Preston Jacobs' a theory about little Walder that it's actually Big Walder that kills him because he's blood all over his hands.
Well, that was my question. Who is responsible for this? Because the spearwives say no, and I can't imagine them killing a little boy.
It does seem like a little. It seems sloppier than the other murders. I actually really like the idea that it is the Big Walder. Is that right? Yeah, Big Walder kills Little Walder.
I think
because they were always talking about, like, they were always kind of fighting about that kind of thing, and it would show that tempers are rising, not just between different houses, but within houses as well.
I think it was Roose.
Oh, you think it was Roose? Oh, do
tell. Roose is the one who says foul work, which just makes me think your work. And the delight that he seemed to have on, like, right, stop killing each other, everyone. You're clearly eager to fight. So let's go out there and get Stannis. And that was the, like, you know, the
the impetus to get them out of the castle.
Yeah. The what was he called?
Also, he only stops it after a fatal blow has been dealt to Manderley. Is Manderley going to get out of this?
Well, the Maester is tending to him, and he's had his throat slit, but he's a big guy, and it's described as only going through 3 of his chins.
Only a few of his chins.
So that's going to cause a mess, and there will be blood everywhere. But I don't think whether or not it's got his jugular vein.
Also,
it's affecting his vital organs. I don't know. I don't think so.
Manderley flopped around like a clubbed walrus.
Yeah. Poor guy.
But it's kind of
But I think he survives. I do think he survives. Yeah.
Like the Manderleys, more of them were killed than the Freys. Like 6 Manderleys were killed.
AJ thinks Big Walder killed Little Walder for line of succession, possibly. But I think they're still quite far down the line, aren't they, of succession? But then again, Freys are dropping like flies. So
literally,
yeah.
But Big Walder is called Big Walder because he's first in line.
Yes.
So why kill Little Walder? But in saying that, I think it makes sense that it would be like children turning on children is kind of, that's the idea. Although I never thought that it could be Roose to try and get them out.
What would be the worst thing to spark that? You know, like in the First World War, that like shooting that Ferdinand guy, and everyone then that was it. That was the catalyst. It's makes like sense. The worst possible thing would be to kill a child. That will get everyone just baying to get out there and fight. And because at the moment, I don't trust any of them at all. I don't trust Dustin. I don't trust Manderley, I don't trust any of them. I need them to fight for me. What can I do that's so horrible that somehow unifies them and gets them to go, you know what? Let's stop fighting each other. Let's go and get Stannis. And so Roose is my bet.
They don't even answer the question. Although Manderley's response is cold. At least he won't grow up to be afraid.
It is. It is. He just couldn't help himself. He had far too much Arbor Gold, didn't he? He shouldn't have said that at all.
Indigestion from Frey pie.
Roose wouldn't care if a child was killed. He's just going to be that icy,
He doesn't care that his own child is killed.
No, he doesn't care at all. But he needs them to fight for him. He needs. But
it would also play into his hand if Manderley was killed. Like Manderley is an obstacle.
Yeah, it would be a bonus if he was taken out at the same time as him, lighting the.
I like it. I like it because
the touch torch thing. Yeah,
he could even have put Big Walder up to doing it.
Could have done, yeah.
And the other thing is, it would bring the story full circle because that's what gets Ned out of Winterfell. Bran's attempted murder.
Yeah. So
when you do something against a child, that's kind of,
all hell breaks loose. Yeah.
Do you think Roose, Connie has a question. Do you think Roose killed Domeric? He seemed like an artsy Rhaegar type, not a killing Flare type. That's Roose killed his own son.
Again, I wouldn't put it past him. He's not the kind of son that I need. I need someone like Ramsay who will fight all my horrible, dirty battles for me.
So here's the question. Will Roose take out Ramsay in the books, or will Ramsay take out Roose?
I think Ramsay will realise he's being manipulated from day one by his father to do his dirty work for him, and that at a moment's notice, Roose can just take him out. And he's fought so hard to not be a bastard anymore, to be a lord and be recognised as the heir to the Dreadfort. Why not expedite his death?
Oh, and AJ just says that little Walder was ahead in the line of succession. So there you go. Thanks, AJ. Yeah, interesting. Did I have anything else for this chapter now? Wait, now and I see. I think that's it. I just that the wildlings, ironically, the wildlings are shocked at Ramsay's savagery. They can't get over just how bad he is, which is kind of maybe one of the reasons why security is so lax around her, because the guys are like, Jesus Christ, this girl, let her out.
Yeah,
it's awful. It's awful. AU's going to work, and I think we're about heading off as well. Do you have anything more for Theon?
No, that's it. So next week we've got another Dany and John chapters seem to kind of appear right next to each other. Yeah. We've got Cersei, which I'm convinced is the Walk of Shame. I'm pretty sure it is. And then, or at least the beginnings of it. I think it's all in one chapter, though. The whole thing is in one chapter.
I couldn't remember if she had 1 or 2 chapters in Dance.
I think she has the Walk of Shame, and then there's one after that. I'm sure there's one after that.
So
yeah. And then we've got the Queen's Guard and the Iron Suitor. So we get
our first Victorian chapter.
Victorian chapter, yeah.
Is that our first Victorian chapter, or have we already had one?
I think we've already had one, but this will be him and Makoro, I think, on the ship.
Right. Yes, you're right. We did have one. Dany 9. That's our last one, is it? No. We must have another one. Because she takes off and then she's wandering around later on. Isn't that right? So there's 10, I think. I'm terrible.
Yeah,
she has 2, and the second one is the Walk of Shame. Yeah, I think next week is her like trying to be questioned. I think that's what next week's is.
Well, it's yes, it could be.
Because the Walk of Shame ends with her meeting the Mountain again. So that's the end of that. Yeah. So
so we will be back next Sunday.
Our last one before Christmas.
Last one before Christmas. And we've got, all in all, we've got about another 14 chapters in this book left.
Yep.
So another 5 next week, and then a break for a couple of weeks for Christmas.
Yes. So thank you to everybody for coming along in the chat. And yeah, you're right, AJ. We do have some solid chapters next week. Connie, I hope your cat is feeling okay and all that. And AU, best of luck at work. And thanks to everybody else who came along. And thank you, Claire.
You're welcome.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.